At the beginning of the book of Revelation, John talks about how Christ made us to be a kingdom of priests to serve God. This verse is the basis where Martin Luther, then, the Protestant Reformation, got the idea of the priesthood of all believers, a phrase you may have heard of. That with old Catholicism, it said that you had to go through the priest in order to get to God. But if we're all made a kingdom of priests, then we can go directly to God ourselves. We don't need a priest to intercede for us. In a sense, we are all priests. We are all servants. We all minister to those in need. And ministering and caring for those in need is what Jeremiah is talking about in that passage we read from him this morning. God passes judgment on shepherds who don't act like shepherds. The rulers, leaders who were supposed to take care of the people, but instead scatter the flock and drive them away. We all know examples of leaders who aren't good leaders. And we all know examples of persons who should have cared or were supposed to care, but didn't. Unfortunately, it happens. And here God says that those shepherds are no longer going to be shepherds. God's going to bring back the sheep that have scattered and place over them shepherds who care for them. Basically, shepherds who are going to do the job shepherds are supposed to do. Shepherds who take care of their flock. Shepherds who care. We have all been given people to love. God has given all of us people to love and take care of. And in the sense, then, we are all shepherds. We all have a flock of some shape or size whose care is our responsibility. In a sense, we're not only a kingdom of priests, but a kingdom of shepherds. And as shepherds, we have the perfect role model of how to be a shepherd who cares. And the good shepherd, Jesus Christ. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep and does not run away when trouble comes. I am the good shepherd, I know my own, and my own know me." A good shepherd, a shepherd who cares, knows his sheep, and his sheep know him. The shepherd's not a stranger, and the shepherd doesn't leave when the going gets tough. In the Old Testament, the prophet Ezekiel describes the actions of a good shepherd as one who will gather the flock together and feed them with good pasture and bind up the wounds of any who are injured. That's what the good shepherd does. The shepherd knows his sheep so that he can always find them when they're scattered. He gives them good food to eat. He takes care of their injuries, washing off the wound, adding neosporin and a bandage so it can heal. He takes care of them. And that's all that's described in that last hymn we just sang, which is based on the 23rd Psalm. "The King of love my shepherd is, whose goodness faileth never." Or, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul." The good shepherd restores your soul. It's what good shepherds do. And they do it without losing their own soul in the process. One of the last times I was at the Walmart across the street here, I overheard a lady in a wheelchair say to another shopper that I lost myself while taking care of others. If you're not careful, that can happen. But we know, following the model of Jesus, that he takes time to take care of himself too. He takes time apart. He takes time to pray. He takes time with God. He rests. He makes sure he gets enough to eat also. And he's our model for how to be a shepherd and take care of others. Now the so what, or the why, of why God's providing shepherds who care for the sheep is so that the sheep will no longer be afraid or dread harm. We need shepherds who care for us so that we don't have to be afraid. When you have a good leader in charge, then you're not worried about what might happen. You know they've got your back and are looking out for your best interests. I was at the District Committee on Ordained Ministry this past week for a mock interview before going before the conference board. And one of the things the chair told me afterwards was that he's got my back. He's on the conference board also as chair of our district. And he said that when I come before them, there'll be 30 other people who don't know me. Now, he knows me. He knows and believes I'm ready to be commissioned this year. I've got to let those 30 other people know too. But it was so encouraging to hear him tell me that he would completely back me. How often do we get told that these days? How often do we get our fears reassured? When a shepherd cares for the sheep, and the sheep don't worry about what might happen. They know their shepherd will provide for them and not lead them astray. Now, sometimes we're the sheep being taken care of, and sometimes we're the shepherd taking care of others. Whose back do you have? Who can you help worry less and be less afraid? What words and what actions let others know that they don't need to be afraid, they don't need to dread any harm? And then how have others helped you? And how can you help others? It's true that there are times where someone will not accept your help. There's an older gentleman I often see walking by the community where I live, and one day when it was raining, I pulled over to offer him a ride because he was walking out in the rain. And he didn't even look up at me. He held out his hand and just kept on walking in the rain. So I kept driving. You can't help someone who doesn't want help. You can't share the gospel with someone who won't receive it. So you move on. You find someone who is willing to receive your help, someone who does have the ears to hear that you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to dread harm. The other reason Jeremiah gives why God will provide shepherds who care for the flock is so that none of them will go missing. A good shepherd knows how many sheep are under his care, and he goes out and looks for the ones who are missing. Jesus even tells that parable about the shepherd with the 100 sheep. And one night when they return back to their pen, he only counts 99. The shepherd doesn't decide, good enough. I'm tired, I'm going to bed. The shepherd leaves the 99 and goes back out to search for that missing sheep, and doesn't stop searching until he finds them. Some of you know we have to turn in statistical reports each year. And in North Carolina, it was even once a quarter. And there's always a grumbling among pastors because numbers don't tell the whole story of a church. And not all ministry is quantifiable with numbers. You can tell, how many people came to an event, but you can't necessarily always tell just how many hearts were changed or how many lives were impacted and how they were impacted. And yet numbers are one measure of church vitality. Because I've heard it pointed out that counting is how the shepherd knew that one sheep was missing. If he hadn't counted how many sheep he had, he wouldn't have known that one was missing and needed finding. And as you look around and see who's here and who's not here, give them a call or a visit. Send them a card in the mail maybe. Let them know you're thinking of them and that you care for them. Sometimes we're on the receiving end of care as the sheep. Sometimes we're the ones giving the care as a shepherd. When it's your turn to care for others, that's the goal, so that none go missing or live in fear or dread the future. And sometimes it's what we need other people to tell us and check back in with us. Remember the story back in Genesis where Cain is so jealous of his brother Abel that he murders him. And then God asks Cain, where's your brother? And Cain answers the question with a question. Am I my brother's keeper? Have you all ever thought about that question? Or the answer to it? Because the answer is yes. We are our brother's keeper. We are responsible for our brothers and sisters, just as they are also responsible for us. My husband reminded me last night that the last line in the newest Marvel Netflix, it's Luke Cage. We live and watch all the Marvel universe and the superheroes in our household. The last one that came out on Netflix is called Luke Cage. And he's the superhero. And the bad guy is his half-brother. And at the end of the series, Luke Cage says, yes, I am my brother's keeper. There's actually a lot of theology in some of this Marvel stuff. That's what keeps me engaged in it. We are responsible for our brothers and sisters, just as they are responsible for us. We've all given people into our charge to love, just as we are loved by others. Sometimes we're the sheep. Sometimes we're the shepherd. Thanks be to God. Amen.